Thank you, ma'am. Tonight, the focus is going to be on what the whole Sunni-Shia differences are. And we get to that in a bit. First of all, I'll give you an example of why we have meetings like this, is it's to educate people. How many of you know what country Mount Rushmore is in? Any of you heard of Mount Rushmore? Okay. That is the topic of our first slide.
What country is Mount Rushmore located in?
I don't know.
Are you an American?
Yeah.
American. Okay, I'm gonna have to revoke your citizenship.
Okay. It's okay.
What country is Mount Rushmore located in?
I don't know.
Are you an American?
Yes.
Were you born here?
Yes.
Okay. Mount Rushmore doesn't ring a bell?
No.
No.
Sorry.
Okay. What country is Mount Rushmore located in?
It's in, it's over in Asia. I think it's China, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it
You
is.
think Mount Rushmore over in China? Kim Jong-un has attacked Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
And the question is, should we send troops over there as a response, or are we already spread too thin? What should happen in response to the attack on Mount Rushmore?
I think we shouldn't do anything. I think our troops are working hard enough. They need a break. Been in Iraq and Afghanistan for 15 years. I don't think we need to send our boys in.
And so to avenge the destruction of Mount Rushmore, you think that would spread us a little bit too thin?
Yeah, I think it spread us a little bit too thin. I think we should just stay in America and just worry about ourselves.
And, you know, pay attention to American issues and American history and
yeah, exactly.
American monuments.
We got plenty of stuff going on in America right now. We don't need to be worried about other countries.
Americans are so lost and out of touch, they don't even know what's going on in their own backyard, let alone what's going on halfway around the world. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, most people don't really watch the news. They don't really pay attention to what's going on. They just kind of worry about their own lives.
You've said it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You think it was right for Kim Jong-un to destroy Mount Rushmore?
No. I don't think it's right for anybody to destroy anything that God created.
There you go. I love the guy, the way the guy had leading on questions. Americans have no clue what they're talking about, right? Oh, yeah. But that's why we do this, because Americans are willfully ignorant. And they're allowed to be. One of these politically in the States that's very big is, in fact, North Carolina's governor this last week spoke out against the whole bringing the Syrian refugees in because they can't be vetted. And don't know if you heard, but over the New Year's night in Europe, there were roughly 1,000 sexual assaults / rapes in Europe. Mostly from the guys who were coming in allegedly from Syria. The guy who did the bombing in Istanbul, Turkey, was just the week before registered as a Syrian refugee. And so there are a lot of people who say, hey, this is kind of scary. And beyond the big stuff, there's a social difference. I'm going to show you 2 videos of interactions of young people in their late teens and 20s where the male is a Muslim migrant telling a local female of the country that they're not dressed appropriately, and the female doesn't cow to the individual. There's a response that I don't want to happen to here. He's not done.
And nobody's doing anything?
That's the European way. People are afraid to do things.
Wait, where was
That
that?
was the Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
This next one was France.
Where was that?
That was the Netherlands, I believe.
Ça vraiment c'est du lourd.
All I have to say is none of those men better tangle with the women in this room.
Yeah. But this is what we're trying to stop coming here. Because they don't come here with our values. So this is the U.S. the last 2 years. I had to add the 6th January event in Philadelphia, where the guy walked up to the police car and started shooting. And a symptom of what is wrong with a lot of politicians is The guy who did it said, I did this in the name of Allah. I submit myself as to the Caliph Baghdadi. 2 policemen repeated, this is what the guy said he's doing it for. His mother said he was a good, devout Muslim. The mayor said this has nothing to do with Islam.
Right.
Because they don't want to admit it's happening. All of these events happen in public places. None of them were somebody's backyard or in their home.
You know, that Philadelphia mayor, he also said no.
In no way, shape, or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam or the teaching of Islam has anything to do with what you've seen on that screen. That is abhorrent, it's terrible, and it does not represent the religion in any way, shape, or form or any of its teachings.
Would say.
He's speaking for them.
Yeah.
And they directly announced it.
Yeah.
Said we're doing this.
Yeah.
That isn't denial of reality.
Well,
But I also heard that there have been rapes across Europe, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Poland, for over a year, and it's never been reported.
Yeah, Sweden is currently the rape capital of the world.
Yeah.
And it's migrants. All right, so that's the U.S. only. This is last month only. 171 attacks in 29 countries, killing over 1,000, wounding over 1,000. These are all civilian casualties. These are not guys going after militaries. And it's primarily...
Is that India?
Say again? Yeah, India. India, Bangladesh, Thailand, the other big ones to include Kenya, because Al-Shabaab's going into Kenya, going after people. So that's 1 month. The top left corner, that's how many attacks have occurred by people saying they're doing it in the name of Allah since 9/11. So that's last month. This is last year. 2,883 attacks, 27,550 deaths, 26,143 wounded. 1 calendar year, all civilian, 51 countries, all in the name of Allah, because somebody either is not Muslim enough or simply not Muslim. And Muslim enough is an important point to them. And you can see where it's concentrated.
I can't see what's going on in South America.
Nothing. It's covered for a reason. Last calendar year, nothing happened in the Americas except for the 5 events in the U.S. 2014, Canada had at least 3 events. All right, on to the topic du jour. Sunni-Shia war, how it began. Clearly, we see Iran and Saudi Arabia being the most vocal right now, because Saudi Arabia executed a Shia leader that Shias all across the world were very respectful of, and it's created a big problem. This goes back, and in all honesty, it goes back to right after Muhammad died. But specifically, it goes back to what Muhammad left. Muhammad was poisoned after the Battle of Karbala. He actually allowed the widow of a man who was killed in the battle to make him a meal. Don't know what you, that's tactically unwise. And she poisoned the leg of lamb that she fed to him. The story goes that he took a bite and immediately spit it out, but it still was enough that in 632 he spent about 2 years painfully dying. And yet never said, when I go, John will be my successor. Never once did he think to say that. So when he died, there was literally the day he died, we were scrambling over who was going to become the next guy. One guy thought it should be him because he was the big military leader. Another guy thought it should be him because he, in essence, financed all of Muhammad's stuff. Muhammad's cousin, who also married his son, Ali, thought it should be him because A, he was bloodline, and B, early on in Muhammad's career, he had promised Ali would be his successor. But the guy was younger, and so people didn't want it to be him yet. Interesting to note, Ali was really the great warrior. He's the guy they say carried the gates off the city when they went to attack. Ali was the great warrior. Think David in the Old Testament. Ali was the warrior. But Muhammad didn't say, this is my successor. So they instantly started saying, his bloodline, his leadership, and they had no real clarification. So they established this caliph thing, the caliphate, to keep that succession going. And when people started saying, Muhammad's dead, we're out of here, the first guy to follow him, Abu Bakr, started wiping them out as apostates, which successfully stopped people from leaving. When you get killed, the guy next to you gets up, you tend to turn back and say, oh yeah, no, I'm still in. We're still on this thing together. So we take a look at the four guys we're talking about. Four rightly guided caliphs. We start with Abu Bakr. Look at how all these guys ended their careers. They were caliph for life. Some it was 2 years, some it was 10. But they were all caliph for life. Abu Bakr collected all the Quranic texts, but they were still kind of in a big jumbled thing. And Umar was really the guy who spread through war. He was really the battle guy. He was the guy who I told you when Muhammad died, thought he should be in charge. And didn't make it. And initially said that Abu Bakr had stolen from him, but then retracted it later so they wouldn't kill him. But he really spread the fort. By Uthman, we had gone to a sub-tribe of the Quraysh tribe that Muhammad belonged to, and they took power. It was the Umayyad tribe. And Uthman's death at the hand of Muslims is what created the problem that almost instantly split Islam into two formal sections. Ali, who thought he was going to be the first caliph, ended up being the fourth one, and he almost immediately had to defend himself, lost in a battle, and it went downhill from there. You'll note Shia got here, partisans of Ali. We'll come back to the second, but look at they all were murdered as opposed to living to a ripe old age. So clearly, Islam's leadership did not stem from a love of God and a love for each other from the very get-go. So what happened? When Muhammad died, they had captured the Arabian Peninsula, which was unique. No one had done this before. Within another few years, within 25 years after they went to Mecca, after the Hijrah, when they went from Mecca to Medina, 25 years later, they had conquered this section of the world. Interesting note, that little red piece was I mentioned that Uthman was an Umayyad tribesman. This is where their power base was. Ali, through what he had done, had really moved over into Iraq. So there was a Syria-Iraq fight going on back then. So when Uthman was murdered, as an Umayyad, they have in fact, as a Muslim, there's a very strong retaliation. We talked about that with the Jordanian pilot. Retaliation is required. The Umayyad tribal leader, Muawiyah, I always get his name, Muawiyah, thought that when Uthman was killed, Ali should have just gone after the guys who killed Uthman and wiped them all out. Well, Ali was kind of glad that he was gone, so he didn't do a lot. So now it became a matter of Muawiyah thought, I've got to do retaliation, and I'm not going to accept Ali until he does. And they started having fights, and because of that revenge, they eventually actually had a battle. And I found how this whole tribal thing worked out.
Oh, jeez.
I circled the ones I'm talking about. So they're all Quraysh. When they arranged the Quran and they had different translations of the same verse, the guidance was if it's from the Qurayshi translator, we're using that. Whatever else translation of the same verse is, we're just throwing that out. So Quraysh was huge. That's where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the guy who's currently in charge in the Islamic State, says he's a descendant of the Qurayshi tribe, which is where he gets a lot of his validity, a lot of his authority. And by the way, I've gotten my group to stop calling them anything but the Islamic State. I use dashes with the region, because they have 11 provinces now, outside of Iraq and Syria. But what they pulled off in France, I told my guys, they're not that one region anymore, they're a global entity. With the guy in Philadelphia, they're a global entity, they are the Islamic State. They called themselves that in 2014. The reason why they called them ISIS in the first place is because that's what they call themselves.
What's that word Levant?
That
say that.
Yeah, I know, and it's irritating. They call themselves the Islamic State of Iraq and Al-Sham. Okay, you're familiar with Al-Sham is, right?
No, I'm Syria.
Al-Sham is, depending on who's saying it, is just Syria, is just a segment of Syria, or is a region. I have a map that ISIS put out. They list Al-Sham as the whole region on their map. So,
Including what? What do you mean?
Israel, Jordan, Lebanon,
Wow.
that whole region, I think even down to the Sinai, but it's questionable. But that whole region is Al-Sham to them in Syria. So it encompasses at least 4 nations. Israel's one of them.
Is that the Levant?
That is what we call the Levant.
Yeah. Okay.
So we know it as Levant. We don't know it as Al-Sham. So we started calling it ISIL, the Levant, because if I said Al-Sham to you, I'd have to have somebody from the region explain to you what that was. If I said Levant, a good number of you would have heard that before and had an idea of what you're talking about.
So ISIS is the more correct terminology?
IS, the Islamic State, is the correct terminology. It's what they call themselves. ISIS is easier to say than ISIL. It's even easier to say than IS. I like to say ISIS because it's easy, just rolls off the tongue as a word. The Greek goddess, I used to love watching Wonder Woman. But what they call themselves in June of 2014 is the Islamic State. I go with it. And I've convinced the people where I work that that's what we're going to go with. And it's kind of nice because it really simplifies things.
So it's the L in ISIL,
Levant.
meaning that entire region?
Yes.
So that's what our leadership is calling them deliberately, likely?
Okay. They call themselves Al-Sham, which they depict on a map they have as being that entire region.
Mm-hmm.
So all we're doing is calling them the same thing they're calling themselves. We're just using a Western term. It means nothing about ignoring Israel. That's the term I've heard a lot. In fact, I told the guy, stop saying that. Al-Sham to them is the region. I've seen people say, oh, it's just Damascus. But I've seen others say, no, it's only Syria. And I have no problem with that because of interpretation. I've seen the map that ISIS put out saying, this is our provinces in 10 years. And on their map, in Arabic, Al-Sham is that whole region. So when the U.S. government says ISIL, they're not besmirching Israel. They're just saying, you know what Levant is, not Sham. We'll call it Levant. It's a semantic word meaning the exact same thing. It is not a slam on Israel. Now, would the president want to slam on Israel? That's up to different people's interpretation. But does this term mean that? No. This is just them saying what the other ones say. So we have Muhammad here, his cousin Ali, who married Muhammad's daughter Fatima, and had 2 boys. Over here we have Uthman, who was part of the Umayyad tribe, and his cousin Muawiyah. And I know I'm butchering the pronunciation. It sounds like an Indian name, but I'm calling Muawiyah.
Muawiyah.
See? Muawiyah. I told you I was butchering it. Muawiyah. But you can see how we're all Quraysh together, but we're Umayyad, you're not. And when you didn't avenge my relative, close relative, okay, I've got to do something about it now. So they fought off in the Battle of Siffin, which is up just west of Al-Raqqa in Syria. And from the statistics I've seen, Ali lost fewer men, like 10,000 versus 30,000, but he had fewer men to start with. So he really lost his power base at that point. And then 4 years later, while he was in the Mosque of Kufa, which he basically adopted as his hometown area, he was then assassinated. So when he was assassinated, the guy who had beaten him in the battle, Muawiyah, told Ali's sons, I'm taking over as the caliph now, because I have all the power and you don't. But I'm a benevolent guy. When I die, Ali's son, you get to be the new caliph. This is how we're going to do this, which placated the 2 boys, Hassan and his brother Hussein. This is a graphic representation of the areas we're talking about. I'm going to come back to Karbala in a minute. Kufa is where what we call Najaf now. I've driven through there. We've got Baghdad, Damascus over here, Sifin up there. So you can see this kind of the area we're fighting our battle now. Yay, time. These are Najaf. These are the mosque of Ali. Now, unlike the Sunnis, who, if you've seen what ISIS was doing to the different graves of Jonah, don't believe in honoring any individual with a marker, clearly the Shia don't buy into that theory. They have a big tomb for Ali. They also have one in Egypt for Hussein, who we're going to talk about in a second. So remember, Muawiyah said, Hassan, when I die, you're back in charge. So, he had Hassan's wife poison him. So Hassan is no longer going to take over. But he died in 19 years after Ali did. So he reigned for 19 years. First guys were 2 years, 10 years, 2 years, and this guy reigned for 19 years. But, shock of all shocks, on his deathbed, he thought, you know what? My son gets to be the new caliph, not Ali's son, Hussein. Hussein rejected the son's leadership, and they fought a big battle. Well, technically they didn't really fight a big battle. Hussein and 72 of his followers were going to Kufa, who had said, if you come back to us, Hussein, we will swear allegiance to you and we will go push out Yazid. Well, he gets there and they've already been approached and convinced otherwise. So Hussein and his 72 followers fight a big battle against 30,000 soldiers. Guess who wins? It's not Hussein. All the men are killed, all their possessions taken, all the women and children are split up as slaves to the victors in the region. This is the point where the partisans of Ali and the Sunnis permanently go different directions. We start with the Shiites, the Sunni-Shia, and there's other ways of playing the pronunciations with the hyphens. I'm not going to go there today. We're not in that kind of a class. But they believe that the caliph is through the bloodline. And not only is the leadership through the bloodline, but they also inherit the prophet's spiritual knowledge. To some, the senior leader is almost, if you will, the Pope is to some Catholics. He is the representative of God. He said it is divine. And again, they are the partisans of Ali. So it all comes out of Ali. This is the Hagia Sophia Mosque in Istanbul, and that's Hussein's nameplate. I'm glossing over lots of details because we're not here to take a course. We're here to get the concepts. All right, now, interesting note on history. The day of Ashura initially was celebrated by the Jews as the day that Moses led the people of Israel out of Egypt. And I'll tell you the story that got Muhammad involved in this. It also happens to be the day that Hussein was killed. And to honor that, every year, the Shia who are lamenting the fact that they were not there to protect Hussein, who was brutally butchered, flagellate themselves as a part of that, we're sorry we weren't there, we associate with what you did. And in case you're thinking that this is a thing that only happens over in the Middle East, and primarily happens in that whole Najaf, Karbala area, into Baghdad, millions of people, millions participate in the celebration. This is Atlanta last year. I'm sorry, 2014. No kids play with toys, not really cut themselves, so they get used to it. You saw the Middle East, the parents cut the kids' foreheads, the kids bleed profusely as well. This is about an 8-minute video, and I figured this would give you the idea of what they did.
These are the Shia.
Atlanta, Georgia.
This is Shias.
This is Shias. And they are flagellating themselves because of the battle of the 30,000 versus the 72. And this is them kind of putting themselves into living history, if you will.
And they have to bleed, not just hit themselves, they have to bleed.
And you said this happened in Georgia?
This is Atlanta, Georgia, 2014.
Out in the public?
Yes.
This, I mean...
No, this is a private property. This is like one of their facilities. It's not like down at Walmart.
Right, yeah.
Not the Walmart parking lot.
Is that part of the Ramadan?
No,
No.
no. Although there are times they will overlap.
Now, do they have a lot of problem with these fellas raping women and brutalizing people in Atlanta, Georgia?
No.
Not that I know, no.
Now, what group is this? This is
These are the Shias, partisans of Ali. Ali's son, Hussein, was butchered in the Battle of Karbala, which wasn't really a battle. They actually were cut off from the waterways and then were just slaughtered.
And they do that for 10 days.
Yay!
So they don't go to work or anything like that? They take off like a holiday, 10 days and do this, or?
No, I think they work. They just, when they're done working, they gather. Yeah.
They don't do this all
They
day.
land the jet and go to work.
No, they don't do this all day. There were even in this 8-minute video, there were clearly stoppages where they would pause. They, guys who were really bloody, I didn't show you, were taken off. One guy was helped, away. But
And the woman will be weeping and crying and yelling.
yeah, so it's well orchestrated. So we go back to the whole Ashura thing. We watched the guys in Atlanta flagellating themselves because of Hussein's death. Well, this is how Islam as a whole started celebrating Ashura. Muhammad went to a place and the Jews were celebrating. He said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Well, we're celebrating this event." And he said, "Oh yeah? Well, we're more in touch with Moses than you are." And he took over the holiday. I call it the Me Too syndrome. You can celebrate it, me too. In fact, more of me, because I'm more betterer than you. All right, a little more on the Shias. There we go.
Test with the end.
Have you guys heard of the 12ers? Have you heard of the 12ers?
Yeah.
Okay. 12ers are simply those who believe that, and I've got a quote from Muhammad, that there's going to be 12 leaders, and that 12th leader is going to be the one who brings about the salvation of the world and brings everything back to peace and justice.
The Mahdi.
The Mahdi. We haven't talked about peace and justice in this group much, but it is a term that means peace according to Allah and justice according to Sharia. It doesn't mean lack of fighting and everyone gets treated equally and gets taken care of. But that's a different day, different talk. So the Mahdi was born 869, and in 841, they all had a spokesman for them. Like, I would want to say something to you as a group. This is my representative. He would come and tell you what I said.
An interpreter.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so what happened was the Mahdi disappeared. But for years, he kept coming out saying the Mahdi said this, Mahdi said that. And finally he came out and said, the Mahdi said he's gone away and will come back again someday. And he and Jesus will lay lace to the world and will make all things better.
Is there a reason the picture is cross-eyed?
I like it. He was at an event and he made a joke with somebody, but somebody actually got a camera and took the picture. And I was looking for a picture of him. I saw that. I said, you know what? He's not here to be bothered by it, so I'm going to use this picture.
And we're not expecting.
Is the 12ers, is that supposed to be the last caliph?
The 12ers, yes.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So in Bukhari, Muhammad said there'll be 12 Muslim rulers who will rule, and then the sentence, which I did not, the guy said I didn't hear what the next statement was, and all of them will be from the Quraysh. When I talked about the Quraysh tribe and the Umayyad tribe, they'll all be from the Quraysh. Quraysh is important. And so Shias believe that the Mahdi will reappear and there'll be wars, and I like this one, for no reason, but there'll be wars all over the world, and then he will come back wielding Ali's sword. Remember I told you Ali was the guy who was a battle warrior? So they'll come back in fire and brimstone, and that's why Ahmadinejad was really scary to me when he was president. He's a firm believer in the Mahdi coming back. In fact, when he was mayor of Tehran, he widened the main streets so that the Mahdi's army could march through it. Believer. Put money to it. And I was always afraid he was going to do something to start the world on fire, so as to bring about the Mahdi. That he, if you remember, he would speak to the UN. And at the UN delegation, he would talk about the returning of the Mahdi. And here it comes. We're going to wipe the Jews out. Mahdi's coming back. Woo! That's the one group. Sunnis, they believe the caliph should be elected, the guy who knows the most. Wisest, greatest leader. Kind of like the Pope is elected among the leadership of the Catholic Church. They like the fact that he knows what he's doing. They're the people of custom and community. We call it the Sunnah, knowing what Muhammad said and did. But the custom and community, the Sunnis, to them, instead of the caliph being the guy who is God's representative to man, he's the guy who guards the Sharia and makes sure everyone stays in accordance with the Sharia law. And from the Sunnis, we are concerned with two groups of philosophies, which in all honesty, when you know about it, it's just one. And you've probably heard them in both names. First group are our good friends, the Wahhabis. The Wahhabi movement, by the way, which include our good friend Osama bin Laden and his followers, and ISIS and others, they basically follow this guy named Wahhab, who helped the House of Saud establish dominance, and in the 30s when they became a nation, that's the group that took over, and that's why they are imposing Sharia law in Saudi Arabia now. And we've talked, I think before, their method of execution is crucifixion, and they crucify your body after they beheaded you in many cases. It's the thing to do. But if you call somebody who's a Wahhabi, they'll be insulted. We're not following Wahhab. We read his teachings. His teachings tell us to be a Salafist, which we'll get to in a minute. And so we're really Salafists, we're not Wahhabis. But the rest of the community calls them Wahhabis because Wahhab is the guy who said, hey, we're going the wrong way. Let's go back the right way. He got his idea in the 1700s from another guy. This other guy is Ibn Taymiyyah. I don't know how to pronounce that either. So he lived in the 12th and 13th century. He had he said lots of things. Again, I'm doing 3 weeks worth of schooling in 20 minutes. He said they had to resist, fight, and overturn any Islamic government that wasn't Islamic enough. Okay? Which would currently, for many, include the Saudi government, because it's really a tyranny, not a true Islamic government. And they should enforce Sharia against those who don't believe like they do. Two overriding principles of the Wahhabis based on Taymiyyah's teachings that they had to do that. Now, they refer themselves as Salafists. A Salafist is really one who's an ancient one. The Al-Salaf, Al-Salih, the pious believers. We need to go back to when Muhammad was alive and that first generation, because Muhammad said the greatest generation is the generation right now. The second greatest generation is the next generation. The third generation is after that, and beyond that, y'all are just be terrible. But he said the current generation is the greatest generation. Therefore, as a good Muslim, I should be emulating that first generation. And how did they behave? What did they do? We're going to ignore all caliphs who got killed, right? We're going to ignore that part and go with the fact that they were following Sharia law. And so they want to restore authentic Islam in the literal adherence. I was reading this morning, a kid, I forget what country, cut his own hand off because he thought he might have blasphemed. A young teenager who implemented Sharia law upon himself in a literal interpretation. And they want to re-Islamize themselves at the daily level. All that combined, this is what the world looks like today. Sunni being the light green, Shia being the dark green, which is why Iran versus Saudi Arabia is so blatantly apparent. And as Bob and I talked about, not shown on this map, which was interesting, right here is a little pocket. Is it? No, it's not there. Right here is a little pocket of Shias who some are fearful. By the way, that's where the oil is. Some are fearful we'll take control of that area. Iran will help secure them, and Saudi Arabia will cease to have money.
Is that Bahrain?
No, Bahrain's down. Bahrain, Qatar down here. Qatar's right there. Bahrain's right there.
That's in Saudi, they're in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
They're in Saudi Arabia. And so, and this little pocket right here, this is the, I want to say Hazars. I haven't talked about Afghanistan like that in so long. They actually came from the Genghis Khan invasion and remained in Afghanistan. And they're a heavily abused population. But this is why, and this is where the problem in Iraq comes from. The government that we helped impose upon Iraq was a Shia-run government. Currently it should be Shia. And so all the goodies, guess where it went? To the south and the east, where, by the way, there's also some good land, and everyone else was kind of looked at in the cold. So when the Islamic State shows up, implementing their Sharia law, they did the, we're Sunni, they're Shia, let's go get them! And that's helping to stoke this. Oh, by the way, the Damascus government is also Shia. And so that's why you have all these Sunni, Al-Qaeda associates, and opposition groups in the Islamic State fighting against both governments, because both governments are run by Shias. And I saw a quote last night where some Sunnis believe that Shias aren't even Muslims. They're a sect of their own. And what they've done is they've taken the core foundations, and the Shias say the Sunnis are misinterpreting the Quran into twisted ways, and the Sunnis say the Shias are twisting the Quran. And in the Hadith, they take a part of it that they agree upon, but mostly not. And then you have Sunni, remember the books? That was Sunni. All that was Sunni stuff. And then the Shia have their own. So they've really gone, it's not just a matter of we see Muhammad differently. It's we literally see the universe differently now. And the twain shall not meet in my lifetime. It'll be conquest to get these guys to work together.
You know, you would think they have a lot in common. Because the devout want a strict, literal, I thought, interpretation of the Quran. And I thought they would be more agreeable.
Yeah, I would think.
There is blood between them.